recording too. But all right, welcome everybody to the very first Full Service Workers webcast. Sorry about last time when we got fancy and tried to use a different platform, and it didn't work out because of technical issues. But we're here today with a couple people, workers from across the country. We have one that's going to be joining us later, which is Carrie. But I just wanted to introduce everybody. And today we're going to talk about different topics that are concerning our industry and from a women's perspective, because I think we have a unique perspective with being moms and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'll introduce our panelists, I guess, today. And we have Andrea Devon-Cabora. Hi.
Hello.
So Andrea, if you could tell us where you're from and a little bit about your history with the industry, etc.
Okay. Yeah, my industry professionalism, if that's what you want to call it, spans about 23 years. I've worked in pretty much every major market in the country. I've worked in New York, Philadelphia, Scottsdale, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, and now Silicon Valley. So that's where I currently am. Bartender, server, mom, lobbyist, consultant, all the good things.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
And then our other lovely lady that we have here is Valerie Graham. Valerie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Valerie Graham. I grew up in the suburbs around the DC area, and I have been a bartender in DC for about 24 years, I guess. And I've primarily been a bartender. I had another career trajectory kind of at the same time, overlapping. Sometimes bartending was my full-time job, sometimes it was my part-time job, but it helped me raise my daughter as a single mother in a very expensive city, and it's been like the foundation of my adult life. So it's really important to me.
That's awesome. All right. And then most people know me, but I'll just go ahead and say I'm Simone, and I worked in the industry for 34 years, and I've lived all across the country in Indiana, Chicago, Seattle, and that's where I'm at now. And yeah, and I think this is a pretty unique time in the history of our industry. And today I think we should talk about all of those things. So the first question that I had come up with, and this was from our little itinerary from last or a couple weeks ago, is how is everyone coping with being locked down? And I know some of you guys, I don't know, Andrea, you have a young person at home, don't you? And how's that working?
Sure, we'll use that term loosely. You know, it's been a little bit of a challenge just because we are a special needs family. So autism and just making sure the learning is being filtered to him via computer versus an in-classroom experience is really different. It's a struggle because my wife is in her office working and she needs to have her quiet time and all of those things. But I've gotten into some screaming matches with my kid over assignments and things. And so, and then trying to have that be quiet versus him going and getting Mama D and, you know, telling on me and all the things. So we actually, now that school's getting ready to be over, we just hit a really good stride. So I'm really hoping that Newsom opens the schools up because I will drive my son to the governor's mansion in Sacramento myself and drop him off. I'm not doing this another school year. I can't. I will take everybody out with me. I can't do it.
So in California, are they suggesting that they're going to be opening the schools in the fall, or are they?
No real direction. Newsom keeps saying it's by district, and I sat in on a special needs education meeting for parents facilitated by Sacramento, and they were really not trying to frame it around any time frame or give the state authority. They really wanted individual school districts to make their own decision. I unfortunately live in the school district I think that is taking over necessary precautions. So I don't know. I don't
So,
know what to
so,
even expect. It's changing so much.
rapidly, yeah. So what
Rapidly.
would happen if you got called back by your employer today? Would you have childcare available to
I would
you?
not.
You
No.
would not. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So would that impact your decision then whether or not you went back to work,
It would. If I
or
was
part of it?
functioning in my normal hours, my normal schedule, yeah, it would impact me greatly. Just, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then Valerie, from what I understand, you have an adult child, so she's
An
off.
adult.
But is she
Yeah,
with you? Is she sheltering with you, or is she?
she is not. She is
No.
not. It's quite beneficial to our relationship that we are sheltering separately. She lives at my apartment, or it's her apartment now,
Mhm.
and I live at my boyfriend's apartment. So for me, the experience of quarantine is really, it's really more about my own personal journey with mental and emotional health, and trying to find some structure, trying to find motivation in an environment that just feels really economically unstable. It feels just trying to deal with a future that has so much uncertainty, um, particularly around our career field, which has been thrust into just massive uncertainty, massive instability, with businesses that, we don't know what the landscape is going to look like. We don't know what the reopening parameters are going to be, and how that's going to affect
Right.
business, and how the public's reception to this whole crisis is going to affect business. And so that's kind of more of my journey. I'm quarantined with my partner, who's great. We get along great. We laugh a lot and cook a lot. And he's really patient with kind of my, my thing that's going on. So I'm really fortunate. I can't imagine going through this quarantine as a parent of a young child, or as a person with a partner who was, toxic. Or honestly, I couldn't imagine going through this by myself.
Yeah.
So
And I know there's several people that I know that are alone, and one of my good friends, she's by herself, and she was telling me how it's just been driving her crazy to kind of be by herself during this time. But have either one of you guys done any work with any of the restaurants that are actually kind of up and running and doing takeout, or packing meals for people who don't have food, or any sort of thing like that? Have you guys been?
I haven't been. I know my employer is centrally located in downtown San Jose. So I know once this all started, Santa Clara was one of the first to go on lockdown in the country. I know that he shifted to a to-go program, but as you know, fine dining to go is what that's going to be. So he shut it down, and he just decided to reopen when Newsom on Friday started loosening some things. But
Okay.
I personally am not going to probably returning to work. I am going to talk to my wife about maybe volunteering. Her family does huge volunteering with secondhand harvest, and they are going through a big Catholic charity called Sacred Heart in downtown San Jose.
Okay.
And they're needing food service workers, because that's the only arm of this charity that's open right now, is getting meals made for homeless and getting it distributed to seniors and marginalized people who don't have access to food banks and stuff like that. So I think her and I will probably have to sit down and have a conversation, but I feel like that's where maybe some of my energies need to be channeled right now, is not really having a work schedule, and school's winding down. So that might be a good avenue, but I would love to get out there and volunteer. And I haven't been able to volunteer thus far, just because she is immunocompromised. So we've been taking a little extra precaution where we're concerned, but yeah.
So Valerie, how about you? Have you been called back to work, or what's going on with your job?
So my restaurant closed completely. They did not open for carryout when several restaurants did. I think about 600 restaurants in the DC area, or in DC proper, opened for carryout only, and mine was not one of them. So my job is still shut down. I don't believe that they are considering opening for carryout, but they are. I did get a call that they are in the process of kind of planning the rollout to the rollout. So,
do you know if they have taken up the PPP loan? So I think that's one of the things that we probably should talk about a little bit, in because we're seeing out here that because we are locked down for so long, that the PPP loans are not making sense for a lot of the owners. And we've actually had owners out here return the money even after they've started and tried to bring people back, and it's not working out. So I wanted to see what you guys are hearing in your areas. So Valerie, what have you heard anything about the PPP loans out there?
So it's I haven't specifically asked about the PPP. I haven't heard from any of the people that I'm in contact with from the management of my restaurant that they have applied for that loan program. So I don't know that there is any pressure for them to reopen with the parameters of having to bring back a certain percentage of the staff through the payment, the payroll payment plan. Yeah, so my job is completely shut down, and talking about bringing staff in a week before reopening, whenever that is. And at this point, we don't have a date for the phasing in of the different phases of reopening. Right. So, so at this point, it's still up in the air. We don't know yet. Okay. But yeah, that we have had a conversation, like, are you willing to come back? Are you available to come back? And I am absolutely willing and available, but I do have questions. I have a lot of questions about that. And I guess we'll talk about that when we get to the reopening part of the.
All right. So, so that would mean that, we're all still on unemployment. And so have you guys found it easy to apply for unemployment? Are you guys getting your benefits? Has it been sort of a disaster, like some of the people have been telling us? Maybe Andrea, you can answer.
I know it's been a complete clusterfuck for everybody that I've talked to, from New York to California. I am personally not on it. I didn't work enough hours to qualify for it, but I've heard a lot of frustration on both sides from employers with the PPP loan. Like, how do we force people who still haven't even gotten their unemployment to come back to work? And it's just like, I feel like one arm of this whole scenario isn't kind of talking to the other ones. So you have the unemployment protocols and all of those standards, and I know it goes state by state or commonwealth by commonwealth, but then you have the structured rules for accepting the PPP money. Then you have your government oversight, and that's local, state, and federal. So I just feel like nobody knows, or nobody has a specific answer, because all of the owners I've talked to from everywhere are just up in arms, and there's no one person or one entity to say, okay, this is what it looks like for unemployment. This is what your employees look like on unemployment. This is what it's going to look like if you bring them back. This is, at a slower rate, obviously. And it's just frustrating, because for the first time, I'm looking around the room for an adultier adult, and there's none. Yeah. Nobody's there. And that's a really scary part for me as a functioning adult in society, and not only as a professional in this industry, but overall, nobody has any answers for anything. And for the first time in my adult life, I don't know what to do. And I'm and that seems unfortunately to be the consensus from everybody. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing, or when they're doing it, or how they're doing it.
Well, and I think, like, today I watched the presser with Trump and all of the leaders of his restaurant panel, and they were talking specifically about the unemployment benefits and how it has been sort of a disaster. And the one thing they said, of course, Trump was like, well, we gave them the money, and then but the states are having trouble delivering it because the unemployment offices are just not up to date. They don't have the ability to do it on such a grand scale and things like that. And so, and I've heard, like, I feel like Washington State's done a decent job compared to other states where I've seen people not get anything. So I feel pretty lucky because I was able to get my unemployment pretty quickly, but I know lots of people still haven't. And the state is just, they don't know what they're doing. They really, it's, or maybe it's not that they don't know, but yeah, go ahead, Valerie.
I think it's reasonable that in a situation that is literally unprecedented, that they didn't immediately know what to do.
Right.
I think it's reprehensible that they haven't figured it out.
Right.
We're 2 months in. And so in DC, the initial process, like that first 3 weeks to a month, was just a disaster. The phone lines were, you know, you're on hold for like 7 hours.
Yes, I have heard that.
I experienced, like, you know, I had a 5-hour call and I had a 2.5-hour call, but like back to a couple of days back to back. So you have nobody on the phone lines. You have an unprecedented number of people applying for unemployment in a situation that has never happened before. So like, got it. You know, I'm willing as a person, I'm willing to give you some space to work through that. But in like, I you know, and I like, after 3 weeks, mine went through, and it was really like a manual. Somebody had to manually override the job search question. So the unemployment form, as like the norm, has the question, did you look for a job this week? We were told that we were not required to look for a job, and so we should answer that question honestly. So no, I didn't look for a job this week. Well, now you're flagged. And now somebody has to manually go in, but they're not just manually going in on yours. It's like 60,000 people need to be manually overridden.
Or 1 million, because that's like the new,
So, I mean, but 60,000 just in DC.
Right.
So, but even with that, they removed the question. And once my claim went through, once it was manually overridden, I haven't had a problem. But here we are 2 months later, and there are still people on our district industry webpage that are saying, I haven't gotten unemployment yet. I can't get through to a person. That to me is a disgrace.
It is a disgrace. And so like right now I've been trying to reach out, at least here in Seattle, I've been trying to reach out to the unemployment office, the leaders of the office, to say, look, you know, we still have workers that are not getting a dime, that they're eligible for the money, but they're just not able to get it because their claims are just stuck. What do we do? What do we do? It's so far has fallen on deaf ears. But I'm hopeful that eventually they'll come around, but we'll see. But
in the meantime, here are these people that are 2 months without income, and it's like, oh, just be patient. We're working on it. Well, patience is done for these people. Like it's like, you can't ask people who have worked and abided by the rules of the system and who have paid into the system of unemployment, and you know, and like and like done what they're supposed to do, to just hold their breath and not eat and not need, you know, to pay for their expenses while you figure it out.
Exactly. And that's what I've been hearing is the non-payment has gone on for so long. So now that people are starting to reopen to whatever that looks like, I've heard from workers who haven't even gotten paid. Okay, so if I go back at 15 hours a week, is that going to send whatever's sitting on hold into a tailspin? And I'm not going to get anything for these past 8 weeks. Like, you know, and there, again, there's no real consensus or tunnel of how to get to the other side of this.
Right. And it's frightening too, because if your employer does bring you back because they do get that PPP loan, and then you're working a week or two, and then they decide to give the PPP money back and stop your work, you've already
or
been
they
flagged.
have to close because they've had a positive COVID outbreak at your workplace, and now your workplace is shut down. Like there's all this kind of like, open for how long? Are we open or open until the next bubble?
Or
Right.
are we open until we all realize like this is a moot point to open
Right.
at 25% capacity?
Right.
For us to go behind our bar and bartend for nobody. Why am I there?
Exactly.
So it's just, yeah, there's, and again, this just goes back to the unknown factor.
Well, and I think that's a really good point that you brought up, Andrea. Like, when do you think we should open? Do we open at 50% capacity, or do we wait until 100% capacity? And I think we're seeing out here a lot of restaurant owners and chefs saying, let's wait until we can open up fully before we open up. So I don't know, what are you guys seeing in your areas?
For me out here, I know San Francisco has a lot, the San Francisco restaurant committee or whatever.
Oh, we lost her.
I
Did we lose her?
think she's frozen.
She froze. Here we are. Well, go ahead, Valerie. Maybe you can discuss that point.
I have not heard the conversation from restaurateurs, but I think the consensus among workers, I won't say consensus because I think people land at a different points on the spectrum of open whenever you can open, and then there's a lot of places that are open just doing carry out, and that any expansion in capacity is an improvement. But there's also there's a cost to being open, and there's a tipping point to where the cost of being open is not worth what it costs to operate, in terms of what you can make if your capacity is drastically reduced. And so I think what I'm seeing is a lot of conversation about different ways to expand capacity, expanding outdoor seating, closing streets to use them as outdoor seating for restaurants. And I think that those are some discussions that are taking place. But I mean, even that is not something that can be utilized by every restaurant. Every restaurant isn't on a street that can be closed. So it's not a rising tide that lifts all boats.
And then that brings me to another point. I was referencing San Francisco and how we've lost already half of our brick and mortars permanently, done. Napa, from what I know, is choosing to remain closed for the most part because, Tom Colecchio touched on this, I think it was a week and a half ago. The ambiance of fine dining is what it is. You can't replicate it. You can't cut it down into street food. You can't do anything. So I think with those types of restaurants, I see them staying permanently closed until they can reopen in the manner of somewhat they're used to. But a lot of restaurants that are open now and are opening at 25 to 30% capacity are tacking on that COVID-19. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, it's like another charge. It's a COVID
another
charge.
Surcharge.
And on one hand, I get it. And
Right.
the general public has no idea what our profit margins are. They're razor thin to begin with. And number two, if you're going to bitch about a 90-cent tax on your bill, now that you've whined and cried about not being able to go and sit down, then you know what? Keep your happy ass at home and keep your little 90 cents. You can't have it both ways. Either you want your favorite place to do it, then you have to take care of it. You have to go in and support them, whether that little bitty COVID tax it's not going to eat you alive. And if that's the case, just like tipping, if you can't afford to do it, stay home.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, thinking about that surcharge, I guess is what you would call it, and then placing that, if I go back in time to when I was working, having that on top of a service charge and everything else that's fucking going on, excuse my French.
Mm-hmm.
When does it become too much? Where is that barrier for people where they're like, I don't know if I want to go out and spend all this money, or where do people go? I can't afford this. I mean, one of the interesting things, and this is outside of the industry, I got an email from my dentist the other day, and he was like, yeah, welcome back. If you come and visit us, we're going to require you to bring some sort of PPE, a mask, whatever it is, for you to attend your visit. And then we're going to charge you a $25 PPE charge, because we need to pay for our masks and things too. And I was like, that's kind of ridiculous. Like, why do I have to pay more money to go see you because of this, even though I understand that you need masks, but you're already wearing masks all the time. So it's just a little interesting. So I wonder if like people who are dining out kind of see that surcharge is in that regard as well. So I don't know.
I mean, they might, but then, you know, and we can circle this back to the minimum wage conversation and the paid, the PTO, the sick time. Again, we can try to offset those costs by raising, you know, the price of a burger, raising our draft beers or whatever you need to do. But at the end of the day, you're going to have somebody crying about their $7 beer, their $25 burger. And so, yeah, there are lines that you're like, okay, I'm done paying for whatever. But then that goes back to the whole point. We can't sustain a 30% open in our dining room. And it's not it's not functionable, and it's not really workable. And I really don't see that lasting. I am gonna go on a limb and say we're done. It's either gonna be to-goes and pick up and carry away, or it's gonna be fine dining on, you know, an Altier Cren type of status, La Bernardin. Those are going to be able to maintain. And then of course you have the higher end change, like, you know, Capitol Grill and those kinds of things. But I don't see, unfortunately, any more independent and chef driven, really good independent restaurants. I don't see that happening. You know, your favorite wine bar down the street isn't going to be there anymore. They can't operate. It's not feasible. And again, because we have no captain of our ship anywhere, it's just mass hysteria and confusion and people trying to stay afloat, and they don't know what to do. They don't, you know, I'm happy to pay that extra $1 COVID tax to go out just because it is what it is. And I love all of my peoples. But at the end of the day, are, you know, the general public going to pay that? In Minnesota, we saw the pushback for that extra surcharge with healthcare for workers. And that was $1.30 on your bill of $100 and some dollars. So you're right. Where does it end? Does it end at your dentist? Does it end, you know, when I go to the strip club, am I going to have to pay for my PP? Like what, you know, but on the real, like what does that look like for an entire industry that's dependent on in-person exchanges? It's just,
Valerie, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I think you guys both nailed it. A lot of these conversations that we're having are reminiscent of the tip credit, and I'm seeing a lot on like different like Facebook groups that I'm in. I'm seeing a lot of like grumbling around like, this is why we need, you know, one fair wage kind of thing, which is really baffling to me, because I feel like from where I sit, the COVID-19 pandemic is like almost like a reverse shock doctrine, where we're looking at this thing and you're saying, even with a tip credit, this industry is going to be so drastically affected. And if you could imagine how this industry would have been crippled by the elimination of the tip credit, and how something like this would have been like the death blow. And it's just so strange to me watching like I mean, it's like the people that are talking about the elimination of the tip credit are a one size fits all, you know, I have a hammer, every problem is a nail type thinkers. So it doesn't surprise me, but it's still so surreal to see our industry on life support at this point.
And
people are
most
still
of us
talking about
advocating to pull the plug, which is really weird.
right.
Well, and
Right.
also too, like to that question of the tip credit, you know, was it 7 states that don't have the tip credit that are considered the one fair wage states, and Washington is one of them. And Seattle especially hit, you know, hard with the minimum wage increase. So I just wonder what it's going to be like after we get out of this, and are those cities and states that implemented or have a tip credit, how healthy their industries are going to be compared to places like Seattle, where literally right like at the end of the year last year, 2019, leading up to the rise in the next step in the rise in the wage, where we were going to 1639 from, I would say, mid-November to all the way up until COVID kind of happened. We were dropping restaurants 1 a day. It was ridiculous. 1 a day. And that was because there was sort of like a little wave of, you've got the minimum wage increase hitting you at 1639, and the rents are going up, and people are, you know, the owners were trying to regroup with their leases and things like that, and a lot of them were just like, screw it, this is too much. And they're like, I can't do this in this sort of environment. So now we're going to come out of a COVID now, and then start implementing a lot, you know, another higher wage, or we're going to blanket a minimum wage across the United States without a tip credit. Is that what we're going to do? I really think that people need to be very wary of that stuff with a one fair wage thing, because it's not one size fits all. You can't do that across the country. What works maybe in a place like Seattle is not going to work in a place like Birmingham, Alabama, or New Orleans, or whatever.
I think you can also demonstrate, or at least pose the argument, that it's not working in Seattle. You know, I mean,
exactly. I mean, to a point, I think you can raise the wage, and so I think Chicago got it right. They took their tip credit, which was low, and they raised it quite a bit, but they still didn't make it, you know, $15 an hour. I think they left it at $8 or $8.30, you know, something like that. So they kept the tipping culture intact, and they allowed, you know, tip workers like us to be able to make the money that we're used to making, and to be able to pay our rent. And then that money that the owners are saving with not paying us that increase is going to the back of the house, to the dishwashers and the cooks and the people where it should go. And so that's the thing I think a lot of people aren't getting, is that, you know, a tip credit is part of the balance of how we operate, and to be able to do that. And then on top of it, we need to have the people coming in and out, that influx of customers, and that, you know, people coming in and out. And you can't just do it at a 50% capacity. Can't do it. So and then, okay, so the different states have different stages of opening and different rules by which to do so. Have you guys gotten, Valerie, have you all gotten any sort of guidelines on how to open that are specific or not?
I think they haven't released the guidelines yet.
Oh, they haven't for you guys.
So,
okay.
Yeah, they're still kind of workshopping them.
Okay. And then Andrea, what about California? I think they have, haven't they?
I know I'm in Santa Clara.
Okay.
So San Jose is under Santa Clara umbrella, and they're going to look at those guidelines and kind of go from there. They are requiring all essential workers who haven't been working, that are going back to work, to be tested. And quite honestly, it's a huge laundry list. The health department got involved, which is, they're like making what we already do, our normal side work, our normal precautions, all of those things that, you know, we love Serve Safe for, like to the nth degree. And so we're talking about constantly sanitizing, and the amount of gloves that you have to take off. And, you know, as well as I do, behind the bar, like that's just not
Yeah.
Well, it's not that
A
we're
lot.
dirty or we're, you know, whatever, but I can't exchange gloves after slicing fruit and maybe opening up a beer, you know, or whatever it is. And so if I'm at a table, if I'm serving on the floor, every time I go to a guest or every time I do a task, I'm going to have to stop, rewash my hands for 20 seconds, put on, you know, things, then get my gloves on, then go back to what I was doing. And it's like, you know, running on a theater push on a Friday night, that's not going to work, even if you're at 30 or 50% capacity. It's
Right.
the steps of service allow us to do our job with 50,000 things being thrown at us. That's why we do what we do. It's the rush. It's all of.
Yeah, and so I think, oh, she's frozen again, I think. Oh, okay. So I did notice there was an article about Roseville, California, and them opening. And one of the restaurant owners there was saying that they had this 6x6 rule. So it was no more than 6 people at a table, and then no more, and then they were 6 feet apart. So they had that. Then they had the servers wearing bandanas and masks, and then a lot of sanitizing. So, I mean, I can get down with the sanitizing. I feel like we do a lot of that anyway. So it's like a double down on sanitizing. But the mask thing freaks me out. I'm just going to say it. I'm kind of a claustrophobic person, and I don't like the mask thing, but I get it. I just wonder what you guys feel about wearing masks and waiting tables. How would that feel for you guys?
Valerie, what do you think? Because I already know what my answer
I
is.
think it's, yeah, I mean, I think it's not going to feel normal for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then I guess at a certain point, it's going to be like, okay, this is just what we do. And then it will go away. But like, I don't go, where do I go? I go to the grocery store. That's literally the only place that I've been, except for like picking up carry out here and there. And like, you know, I put the mask on in the store and I feel like I can't breathe. And it's like, it feels like such a trivial complaint, you know, given that it's something that we're being asked to do for the greater good. But I feel I can't imagine it, but like I can't imagine it because we've never been asked to do it before. So once we're all doing it, maybe it's going to be like, oh yeah, there's my server wearing a mask and gloves at the table, and that's not weird. It feels like hospital, you know. And it's like you'll connect with somebody because their eyes are smiling, and like you'll make a funny face at somebody, and you're just going to be like all eyes and eyebrows. But like,
the reason why I bring it up, and I think you make a good point there with the eyes thing, is because I heard something today from a restaurant owner that was on that panel with and talking to the president today. He said that this is a business model that is not compatible with social distancing, and that kind of hit me too, because I think that, you know, us as an industry, that's why we like to be at work. We connect with the customers, we connect, you know, with the guests, with each other. And so moving forward, how do we change that? Like, how do we have to, you know, abide by these rules to keep people safe. How do we change what we do? So that was just really, really interesting to me, on sort of a human level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that like the essence of what we do is like, it's human contact. It's not like, you know, you're not being served a sterile meal in a sterile dining room by like a butler, like, you know, or like by a servant. You're having this a human contact, a human interaction in a place with other human beings who are also having an interaction with food that was made by a human, that's being curated for you and facilitated by a human being. And like, there's just the human essence of our industry and what we do is like what makes it great.
Exactly.
And I think,
and I think
how do we keep
too,
that?
I think too, getting back to your earlier point about this pandemic sort of putting a magnifying glass on how we operate and what's really good for us. When we talk about how we get paid as tipped workers, what are we actually selling? And a part of that is that connection with those people and creating that experience. And so, this just safe distancing and all the stuff is taking away that element of what we actually provide as part of our service. And so I think it's really interesting to think about, and maybe we don't need to talk about it today, but it definitely struck me that that's part of the way that we connect and part of the way we work, and what we're actually selling is that experience. And as far as like getting tips and things and getting paid, how do we go on without becoming, like you said, just sort of a sterile robot in a way? And here's your food, here's your thing. I guess it is.
Or
we're gonna
like
have to
the airport kiosk where you're ordering from an iPad,
right.
Oh,
and
gosh,
like
yeah.
a person who you've never encountered brings the food to you, and that's it, and you pay on the, you
right.
get your next round of drinks, and it's like, yeah, that is a model of service, and it's appropriate at an airport, like but that's not what I want when I go to places.
Exactly.
That's not what I offer.
Yep, exactly. We go for the show. We clock in to perform, and when we're on the other side of it, we're there for a show. We're there for the interaction. My wife and I, when we go out, we sit at the bar for that purpose. Number one, because it's what I do, but also I want to hear fuck several times. I want my bartender to give me a pour of something he maybe just opened. I want to have that personal contact. I want to talk to my service staff and be like, what do you like? Just order me something, make me something, because it's about that organic interaction. And if I glove up and look like I'm going to maybe stick something in your rectum, you're not going to want to order a $200 bottle of wine from me. That's just not happening. So, like, where's the line of comfortableness, not only for you, but for your guests? And if your guests don't trust you, and also let's parties of 5 or 10. I mean, so that's done. So what if they live in the same house? 5 people can't come out for a dinner experience. There's just so many unknowns and so many scenarios that are never going to have an answer. And
right. And
kind of like,
and that's going to lead me to my next little, and we'll kind of wrap it up here. And I think this is our interesting thing is like, what do we look like in the future? What does full service look like in the future? Because one of our main concerns is basically losing our jobs to counter service and takeout, and losing the ability to make tips, because we make far above the minimum wage. And we know that a lot of counter service places and carry out places, they don't pay as much as what we would typically make. So, what does full service look like in the future? Because right now we're not seeing it, So what do you guys think?
I think, unfortunately, you get what you pay for, and I'm probably going to use a term that's probably not well liked. Unskilled labor is what you're getting at your to-go places and your carryouts. I have 23 years in this industry behind me. I have so much wine and spirit and food knowledge coming out of my ass. People like us, I personally, unless we get some sort of unicorn inducing job, we're kind of at a crossroads ourselves. I don't know what my future looks like, because I put a period on the end of my restaurant experience. And so I think there's going to be a lot of us who are highly skilled, who are highly educated in this field, who are here because we're passionate and because we are professionals. We are true professionals. We're just as professional as the doctors going into surgery, as the lawyer going into court. And, unfortunately, maybe it took some of this to have America or our country see us this way, but also you get what you pay for. So I think it's going to be higher end, and I think it's going to be carry out and to goes, and there's going to be no middle of the road, unfortunately.
Okay.
I don't know, Valerie, what do you think on the East Coast?
I think this is gonna pass, and maybe this is me just, I can't imagine a world that's so drastically different than the world that I've always known. I think it's gonna be really weird for a period of time, and then I think it's going to, I think it'll pass. I think that but I think in the process of getting back to that normal, I think we're going to lose a lot of places. A lot of people are going to see the restaurants that they poured their dreams, their hopes and dreams, blood, sweat, tears, life savings into are going to go away because those people aren't going to have any more to give. I think that restaurant families and restaurant communities and restaurant ecosystems are going to be drastically hurt by what happens in the process. But I think on the other side, I think that like a year from now, I think you're going to go to a restaurant and your server's going to come up to your table not wearing a mask, not wearing gloves, maybe a little bit more stringent about the things that we're all supposed to do that we don't actually do. I think maybe that people will be looking a lot more closely to see tables being sanitized, and you'll see more things like disposable menus and whatnot. But I think that, and I don't know if I'm gonna make it through because I'm 47, and I'm like, there's a certain part where I'm like, I can pivot. I work really hard. I'm strong. I have endurance. I can run circles around younger people. I don't smoke, so I don't have to go out and take smoke breaks. Like I'm a tank. But there's a certain like, is this the point for me where I have to start thinking about my next chapter because of the uncertainty? And I don't know. I'm not there yet, but
well, I think a lot of us are. I mean, I think
Mhm.
a lot of us are just like in my circle of friends that are relatively all my age that work in the industry. We've all had that conversation. I had a conversation yesterday where I looked at my friend and I said, you realize that neither one of us are in the industry anymore. Like we are, I mean, we're here, but we don't have jobs and we don't know our future. And do we look at this as devastating, or do we look at this as an opportunity to do something different? How are you going to look to your future? So, but yeah, I think there are a lot of changes coming. So that we get to see, like you said, Andrea, things are changing on a minute to minute, day by day basis. So who knows what tomorrow will bring. But is there anything else you ladies want to talk about, or any other topic before we wrap it up that I didn't kind of cover because we were just kind of having a free chat here?
I don't know. I mean, maybe next time we do this, or maybe just food for thought. As San Francisco shuttered over 2,000 of its brick and mortars, I think people need to realize that it's people's hopes and dreams and passion that's being shuttered, not just the establishment itself. And also, too, what does that do for our vendors, our small organic farmers, our produce, people here in California? I live in a farming community. You would not believe how many fields are being left to rot. Number one, because marginalized brown folks like myself aren't around. Half of us are sitting in cages. The other half are too scared to come out of hiding. And also farmers are kind of like this themselves. What do we do? So I think it's interlinked somehow. If our food supplies don't rebound, how is our industry going to rebound? Yeah.
Valerie, how about you?
I would love maybe next time, or at some point, to discuss like what would you like to see? What are the things as we talk about reopening, and as we're starting to hear from our legislators and our governors and mayors about what reopening is going to look like. What do you need to see as a worker to feel like you're safe going to work, and also that work is economically worthwhile, for, you know, that balance of like risk and reward. And you know, I haven't, like, we're starting to have the conversation that it's safe to go back to work, but for me, I'm naturally a skeptic. So when in February and March we're starting to hear like how deadly this disease is and how the potential for devastation, and pointing to places in Europe where it had really wrought havoc, and asking us to suspend that skepticism, to embrace the complete shutdown of our public lives. I need a certain amount of reassurance to now suspend my suspension of skepticism, to feel like,
Right.
hey, hey, nothing's changed, we haven't done anything different, but like, go back to work, it's cool. And I'm like, but wait, you told me I was gonna die. So, or that my mom was gonna die, or, you know, that I was gonna kill somebody's grandma. So, you know, it's like I need a lot of reassurance. And you know, I need to know more about testing. I need to know more about tracking and how we are going to be assured that we're safe, so that we're not hit with that second wave that I've seen in graphs, that where the second wave is so much worse than the first. You know, there's just a lot that we don't know, that I would like to learn more about. And I just would like to hear what other people and what you ladies are interested in learning and knowing as we're discussing what reopening looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What about you, Simone? What are you thinking about next time?
Well, I'm thinking about a lot of things, and, you know, I think that's, you know, going back to work, what does that look like? And being, and questioning the new laws and rules and things that are coming down. Those are always big things for me, because I want to make sure that we're all either protected or that our jobs are protected, because, you know, I love the industry and I want the industry to survive. So those are the things that I'm looking at. I also want to look at just what's going to happen after we're just up and running. You know, we're still going to have those conversations about tip credit and minimum wage and secure scheduling and all those other things. So I'm kind of focusing on that. And also too, some of the things that have come out of this pandemic. There are a lot of new groups that have formed, you know, alliances of small business owners, alliances of workers, and who are those people and what do they have in mind as well? And I don't know, I think there's a lot to be talked about. And one of the things I really want to do with this, these webcasts, and I'm going to do more in the future, is just to connect people. Because I think in Seattle, especially, you know, we love our environment and we kind of stay up here in our little corner of the world, and we don't really see what's going on across the country. And I just want to connect our workers and our people out here with all you guys across the country, because I've found it really beneficial, and to be able to see what you guys are seeing, and to know what you're thinking as well. And I think that's one of the main things I want to do with these webcasts, is just to kind of connect everybody. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up, because we've been on for an hour chatting, and I've really appreciated this conversation with you ladies. And thank you so much for participating today and being so gracious to do that. So anyway, thank you so much for the first one. We did it.
We did it.
All right. And thanks everybody on the page that's watching for watching us today. So, and we'll put this up, and the recording, because we're recording it and putting it up on the page, and probably on the YouTube channel as well, because we do have an FSWA YouTube channel that is starting. So there you have that. All right. Thanks guys, and have a great afternoon.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Simone. Thanks,
You're
Drea.
welcome.
Bye.
Bye.